In middle of forests, fields and roads forgotten, still today continue appearing military trucks of the Second World War. Vehicles rusted, abandoned far from any front, witnesses silent of a conflict that extended much beyond of the combat direct. In a conflict so extensive and destructive as the Second World War, the effort not itself limited to the front of battle. Engineers and designers industrial also formed part key of the gear. When the economy passed to function almost by complete for the war, all had an objective clear: to produce material for the army. That meant to follow manufacturing in mass what the troops already used, but also to create new weapons and vehicles capable of to offer an advantage in front of the enemy. Which were those machines that accompanied and sustained the war? Studebaker US6, from lone Allied to rocket launcher BM-31. The Studebaker US6 was developed in United States at beginnings of the Second World War as response to the necessity of to have with a truck 6x6 capable of to operate of form continuous in conditions extreme. Its design itself approved between 1939 and 1940, when the Corps of Artillery evaluated distinct models presented by several companies. Although conceived within of the plan's logistical United States, the US6 not itself would define by its use internal, but by to become one of the principal vehicles of transport of the Red Army. The production of the Studebaker US6 began at large scale shortly after, with Studebaker as manufacturer principal in its plant of South Bend, Indiana. At part of 1944, the company REO Motorcar Company itself incorporated as subcontractor in Chicago, manufacturing units identical in terms mechanical and structural, although limited to versions concrete. Between both manufacturers itself constructed more of 219,000 units, distributed between configurations 6x6 and 6x4, and organized in 13 variants distinct that covered functions of cargo, tanker, tipper and tractor. All the production finished in 1945, when the war already itself approached to its outcome. Although the US6 was born within of the plan's logistical United States, its destination principle not was the use internal. The immense majority of these trucks itself manufactured with an objective clear, to be sent to the Soviet Union under the program of Lend and Lease. The first specimens arrived to the territory Soviet in the autumn of 1941, in a moment critical in that the Red Army suffered a shortage chronic of vehicles of transport. From the beginning, the Studebaker was submitted to tests exhaustive by the authorities Soviet that evaluated its behavior between July of 1942 and May of 1943 in conditions real of service. The results of those tests had consequences direct. Although the truck was designed originally for a load of 2.5 tons, the evaluation Soviet led to increase its capacity operative until 4 tons. More forward, in 1945, that figure itself adjusted officially to 3.5 tons, although in roads in good state, the US6 could transport until 5 tons without to compromise its functioning. These figures reflected a reality habitual in the front eastern, where the demand exceeded with frequency the specifications of factory. The engine of the Studebaker US6 was a Hercules JXD of 6 cylinders in line, a propeller of conception conservative that prioritized the reliability over the performance. With a relation of compression low, could function with gasoline of quality inferior, something essential in scenarios where the fuel available not always fulfilled standards elevated. This same engine itself used also in other vehicles military United States, what facilitated the maintenance and the supply of spares. The transmission was a Warner of 5 speeds, with a first gear especially short to facilitate the start with load heavy, and a configuration that allowed the installation of takes of power to drive winches or systems hydraulic in the versions specialized. The case of transfer, manufactured by Timken, offered ranges high and low, position neutral, and the possibility of to decouple the axis front. In the version 6x6, the power itself distributed to the 3 axes by means of a set of outputs designed to support a use continuous in terrains irregular. The axes, also of Timken, included joints of speed constant in the axis front and sets completely floating in the part back, a solution that increased the resistance and facilitated the repairs in campaign. The chassis of the US6 itself offered in 2 distances between axes. The version short itself used in trucks, tipper, tractors and models of load compact, while the version long itself destined to trucks, tanker, platforms of load extensive and variants specific requested by the Soviet Union. All the models employed tires of size standard military, and in the versions 6x4 thought for road, the capacity of load itself doubled regarding the variant's all-terrain, reflecting its use more limited outside of roads prepared. One of the traits most recognizable of the Studebaker US6 was its cabin. Based in the design civil of the brand, was adapted for use military without to lose its character, closed and metallic. To difference of other trucks United States of the era, the US6 incorporated windows of ventilation independent in each door, a detail that facilitated the circulation of air in climates extreme. Although existed a version of cabin open, the principal client of the vehicle, the Soviet Union, showed a clear preference by the cabin closed, more adequate for the cold intents of the front eastern. This choice influenced directly in the production that prioritized that format after the first series. In service Soviet, the Studebaker US6 assumed a quantity extraordinary of functions, was employed to transport troops to long distances, to tow pieces of artillery of great caliber, to move cannons anti-tank and to supply units in zones where other trucks remained stuck. Its robustness and capacity to operate with fuel of low quality it converted in a resource especially valued. The troops Soviet it nicknamed Studa, a name that reflected both familiarity as appreciation, and numerous testimonies highlight its capacity to advance in terrains swampy, where the vehicle's local not could continue. One of the uses most characteristic of the US6 in the Soviet Union was its conversion in platform for rocket launchers multiple. Over its chassis itself mounted systems like the BM-3112, a variant of the weapon known popularly as Katyusha. This adaptation took advantage of the stability and capacity of load of the truck, allowing to deploy the system with speed and to withdraw it before of a possible response enemy. The association between the Studebaker and these rocket launchers itself converted in one of the images most recognizable of the effort logistical Soviet during the war. The impact of the US6 was such that reached recognition official to the most high level. In January of 1945, Representative Soviet delivered to the corporation Studebaker an album photographic titled The Studebaker in the Front Soviet German that documented its use in combat and in tasks of support. This gesture symbolized the gratitude by a vehicle that had contributed of manner decisive to maintain the mobility of the Red Army in the years most hard of the conflict. Although its role principal was linked to the Soviet Union, the Studebaker US6 also was used by forces United States in other scenarios, like the construction of infrastructures strategic in North America and Asia. However, was in the front eastern where left a footprint more profound. After the end of the war, many of these trucks were returned to United States, but a number significant remained in territory Soviet and continued in service during years in tasks agricultural, industrial and military. The influence of the US6 not ended with its withdrawal. Its design served as base direct for the development of trucks Soviet posterior, like the ZIS and later the ZL-151, that to its turn evolved in the ZL-157. Of this mode, a vehicle conceived in United States for a war global ended shaping during decades the logistics motorized of another country. The Studebaker US6 not was the truck most fast, nor the most sophisticated of its time, but its combination of resistance, simplicity and adaptability it converted in a piece key of the machinery of war Soviet. Its history not itself defines by a single battle, nor by a use spectacular, but by thousands of kilometers travelled, loads transported, and units maintained in movement. In that role, silent and constant, the US6 itself earned a place unique within of the history of the Second World War. CCKW convoys of the Red Ball Express day and night. When United States entered in the Second World War, the true challenge not was only to manufacture weapons or to train soldiers, but to move it all without pause through half-world. For that appeared the GMC CCKW, the truck that not was thought for to show off, but for to be in all parts. With the time, that focus it converted in the vehicle of transport most produced of the side Allied, and in a presence constant in all the fronts of the war. The development of the CCKW responded to the necessity of a truck standard capable of to operate in conditions extreme, with load medium, traction total, and maintenance simple. General Motors, through of its division GMC, worked over models previous of the Army United States and them adapted to the new requirements of war global. The result was a design balanced without solutions experimental, thought for to be manufactured in large quantities and repaired with speed even far from centres industrial. The heart of the CCKW was an engine of 6 cylinders in line to gasoline, robust and reliable, coupled to a transmission manual and to a system of traction 6-6 that it allowed to advance by mud, snow, roads destroyed or terrains improvised. Not was fast nor sophisticated, but could to follow functioning when other vehicles remained out of service. That reliability mechanical was one of the reasons principal by which the Army it adopted as truck standard of load. Since the start of its production, the CKW was conceived as a platform adaptable. From the same chassis emerged tens of configurations distinct, including versions of transport of troops, tankers of fuel, trucks workshop, ambulances, platforms for communications, cranes mobile, and vehicles of command. This flexibility allowed that a same model covered multiple necessities without to complicate the chain of supplies nor the training of the units. As that the war itself expanded, the CCKW began to appear in all the scenarios imaginable. Circulated by the roads improvised of the north of Africa, crossed Italy together to the forces allied, advanced by Europe Western after the landing in Normandy, and also operated in the Pacific, where the climate and the terrain put to test any machine. In all those places fulfilled the same function, to carry foods, ammunition, fuel, pieces of spare, and soldiers until where they were necessary. One of the moments most representative of its importance was during the campaigns in France after the D-Day. With the ports damaged and the infrastructure destroyed, the Allies depended almost by complete of the transport by road for to supply to its armies in advance. From that necessity emerged the system known as Red Ball Express, a network logistical continuous based in convoys of trucks that operated day and night. In that system, the GMC CCKW itself converted in the image dominant of the logistics allied, travelling routes fixed without rest for to maintain the front in movement. The production of the CKW reached figures extraordinary. It manufactured hundreds of thousands of units during the war, converting it in the truck military most produced of the conflict by part of the Allies. That scale allowed to standardize pieces, manuals and procedures, something essential for to maintain operative a fleet so large in conditions of combat. The manuals technical were clear, direct, and thought for mechanics of campaign, what facilitated repairs fast, even with resources limited. To the finish the war, the history of the CCKW not itself stopped. Thousands of units remained distributed by Europe, Asia and other regions where they had operated. Many were sold as surplus military, others passed to hands of armies allied, and a large quantity ended in use civil. In zones rural, ancient CCKW itself transformed in trucks agricultural, vehicles of work, transports forest, or simple platforms of load improvised. With the pass of the years, many of these trucks remained abandoned. Some were left in ancient deposits military, others remained forgotten in workshops, farms or warehouses, and not few ended deteriorating to the open air. In many cases, those who them used ignored its importance historical, and them saw only as tools resistant of another era. Decades after, collectors and enthusiasts began to identify them, to restore them or to document them as part fundamental of the history logistical of the war. What makes unique to the GMC CCKW not is a design strange nor a function experimental, but its role silent and constant. While other vehicles gained fame by its armament or its innovation technical, the CCKW sustained the effort bellicose day after day, connecting factories, ports, deposits and fronts of combat. Without it, the mobility allied would have been much more limited, and many operations would have faced grave problems of supply. Today, the CCKW is remembered as the backbone of the transport allied. Its presence massive, its versatility and its resistance it converted in a symbol of the war industrial modern, where the logistics was so decisive as the combat direct. The specimens that still survive, already be restored or found in state of abandonment, represent not only a machine, but a form of to understand the war based in the capacity of to move resources to scale global. The GMC CCKW not was the most fast nor the most powerful, but was in all parts and never stopped of to fulfill its function. In a war defined by the magnitude and the distance, That truck demonstrated that the victory also itself builds over wheels, cargo, and constancy. Dodge, WC62 and WC63, men together, routes without asphalt. The Dodge WC62 and its version almost identical, the WC63, not moved armies nor supplied columns interminable. Its work was much more close. They carried groups complete of soldiers with its equipment over, from a point until the next, at times to few meters of the front. Was a truck thought for the movement human, and for that, when the war ended, followed finding work very far from the combat. To difference of other vehicles United States, this Dodge occupied a point intermediate uncomfortable. Not was so small and agile as a Jeep, but neither so large as the trucks of load that dominated the route's principle. Its size was thought for something very concrete, to transport a squad complete, to maintain it united, and to leave it exactly where it made lack. In place of to go and to come constantly, this truck made fewer trips, but with more persons over. Its design responded to that mission. Had a structure simple, open, without comforts, thought for to climb and to descend men with speed. The benches lateral allowed that the soldiers travelled front to front, with the equipment hanging, the weapons supported, and the body prepared for to descend in any moment. Not was a trip comfortable, but neither had that to be it. The priority was to arrive. The Dodge WC62 appeared first, followed shortly after by the WC63, that incorporated an element additional in the frontal fore to facilitate maneuvers when the terrain itself turned complicated. More beyond of that detail, both shared the same philosophy: resistance, simplicity, and capacity for to move self outside of the asphalt. It itself treated of a vehicle that must to advance by roads destroyed, fields muddied, or tracks improvised without to stop the march. In combat, this Dodge itself converted in a tool tactical. Not moved armies whole, but yes allowed to displace units complete with speed relative, something essential in operations where the time it decided all. Could to carry soldiers to the point of departure of an attack, to collect them after a withdrawal or to move reinforcements without, to fragment to the unit. That cohesion was key. While other trucks remained more back, the WC62 and the WC63 operated close of the action. For that they received hits, itself dirtied fast and suffered the wear of a war that not gave rest. Even so, they followed functioning, its mechanics not highlighted by innovation, but by to endure punishment and to follow ahead with repairs minimal. The Dodge was present in multiple scenarios, from Europe until other theatres, where the conditions of the terrain demanded something more than wheels and goodwill. Its role never was protagonist in the communiqués official, but for the soldiers that travelled in the part back, that truck was the difference between to arrive together or to disperse self. When the war ended, many of these vehicles not returned to United States. They remained where they had been used, distributed by towns, roads, secondary and ancient deposits military. In place of to be scrapped of immediate, they began a second stage completely distinct. In zones rural, the Dodge found a new purpose. Its capacity for to move self by terrains difficult, it made ideal for the field. Ancient trucks of troops passed to transport wood, sacks, tools and animals. The benches were withdrawn, the canvases substituted by structures improvised, and the paint military remained covered of dust and rust. For those who them used, already not were vehicles of war, but machines resistant that fulfilled its function. In many farms, the Dodge ended integrated in the routine daily. It started of dawn, travelled roads that no vehicle modern would have accepted, and returned loaded to the nightfall. With the time, its origin military itself went forgetting. For the owners was simply the truck large, a tool more of the work daily. Decades after, some of these Dodge were rediscovered in barns, sheds or fields abandoned. At times they followed complete, others they were partially dismantled, reused piece by piece. In certain cases the structure served as base for constructions improvised. Only when someone with knowledge itself stopped to observe them came to the light its true identity. What makes unique to the Dodge WC62 and WC63 not is only its function in the war, but its transitions silent to the life civil. To difference of other trucks more large that required infrastructures or fuel constant, this Dodge could to adapt self to a use simple and continuous. For that it survived so much time outside of the scope military. In the narrative of the Second World War, this truck represents something very concrete. Not is the great logistics, nor the machinery industrial to large scale. Is the transport human, the movement direct of men that still went to combat by foot? And more later, is the transformation of a tool of war in a tool of work? Today, each Dodge WC62 or WC63 that appears in state of abandonment tells two stories at the same time. The first belongs to the conflict, to the soldiers that travelled in its part back, to the mud and to the noise of the front. The second belongs to the post-war, to the fields, to the hands that it maintained functioning without to know exactly of where it came. That journey complete, from the war until the farm, is what it converts in a truck unrepeatable within of this series. Not for to be the most produced, nor the most famous, but for to have followed working when the war already had remained back. Scammell Pioneer, to drag tanks outside of the mud. When a tank remained trapped or a cannon itself sank in the mud, the operation not could to follow ahead. In those moments not made lack more fire nor more men, made lack force, for that was the Scammell Pioneer. Its work not was to advance, but to arrive until where all itself had stopped, to extract what was lost and to return it to the war. This truck British not was born with a mission military clear. Its origin was in terrains far of the combat, thought for to work in places where not had roads reliable. Precisely for that called the attention of the army. Not was fast, not was elegant, and neither highlighted by its aspect. But when something heavy remained trapped, the Pioneer was capable of to drag it outside, even when other vehicles simply skidded. During the war, the Scammell Pioneer itself converted in a tool essential for a task little visible, but absolutely critical: the recovery. While other vehicles advanced, he went towards the problems. Its work consisted in to arrive until machines damaged, to hook them and to extract them of the terrain under any condition. In many occasions it made while the zone followed being dangerous. To difference of the trucks of transport, the Pioneer worked to low speed and with enormous effort constant. Not itself treated of to arrive fast, but of not to stop self. Its structure allowed to support tensions extreme, pulling of vehicles much more heavy than he same. In place of to load, he pushed and dragged. That difference marked all its identity. The Army British it used for to save tanks that of other mode would have been abandoned, also for to move pieces of artillery that remained stuck before or after of the shot. In withdrawals chaotic, its presence marked the difference between to lose material valuable or to recover it to time. Many of these trucks itself lost in the first years of the war, especially during the withdrawal of France, what demonstrates until what point they operated close of the danger. The design of the Pioneer never sought to please to the sight, was high, long and coarse. Its appearance reflected exactly its purpose. All was placed for to resist pulls constant, terrains broken and work prolonged, not carried armour nor armament own. Its protection was its force and its capacity for to fulfill the task before of to become her same in a problem. One of its characteristics most distinctive was the possibility of to adapt its traction to the terrain. In situations extreme, could to modify the form in which its wheels touched the ground, for not to stay stuck. This it allowed to operate in mud-deep sand or surfaces soft, where other vehicles remained immobile. That capacity made that was used in scenarios very distinct, from Europe until zones desert. The Pioneer not only recovered tanks, enemy or allies damaged, also rescued trucks of supply, vehicles light and any piece that deserved to be saved. Its work not always appeared in the reports, but each rescue avoided to manufacture a replacement, to save time and to conserve resources. In a war of wear, that was vital. When the conflict ended, many Scammell Pioneer followed working. Some remained in service during years, even decades, in functions of recovery. Others passed to use civil, where its force again was utilized. In works, quarries and zones rural, ancient vehicles of rescue military continued pulling of machinery heavy, as if the war not had finished of the all for them. Some ended forgotten in deposits or abandoned when already not had nothing the sufficiently heavy that to justify its presence. With the pass of the time, they remained covered of rust, dust and silence. Years after, many were rediscovered in ancient terrains, military or zones rural, still with marks of its use original. What makes unique to the Scammell Pioneer not is a figure of production, nor an innovation technical concrete. Is its function silent? Not advanced lines, not opened routes, not transported troops. Its mission was to correct the chaos, to recover what was lost and to return it to the circuit of the war. Without it, many advances would have remained stopped. Within of this series, the Pioneer represents a face distinct of the conflict, not the of the movement constant, but the of the resistance and the recovery, a truck ugly, slow, and absolutely indispensable. When all itself stopped was that made possible that the war followed advancing. Tatra 111, to start engines where the winter kills machines. There are places where a truck not itself measures by the speed nor by the load, but by if it returns to start to the day next. In cold extreme, without roads and with journeys interminable, many machines simply itself surrendered. The Tatra 111 was created for not to do it. Its history begins in a context uncomfortable. Czechoslovakia was under control German, and its industry worked to the service of the war. In that scenario, the factory Tatra received the order to develop a truck capable of to move self by terrains impossible, thought for long withdrawals and operations where not had support logistical regular, not itself treated of elegance nor of comfort, but of resistance pure. From the beginning, the Tatra 111 was conceived as a vehicle extreme. Had that to advance in climates where the water itself froze and in zones where simply not existed, for that itself took decisions little common for the era, solutions that seemed exaggerated, but that with the time would demonstrate to be very advanced to its moment. During the war, the first units were used almost exclusively with ends military. The production civil remained practically annulled while lasted the conflict. The truck itself employed for to move loads heavy in conditions very hard, especially when the retreat German towards the west itself turned inevitable. In that context, its capacity for to follow functioning marked the difference. One of the aspects that most it distinguished was the form in which resolved the problem of the climate. In place of to depend of systems delicate, the Tatra was thought for to avoid directly the situations that rendered useless to other trucks. This it made especially valuable in zones where the winter destroyed engines conventional and where the maintenance was minimal. When the war ended, far of to disappear, the Tatra 111 initiated a second life even more intense. With the reconstruction in March, Czechoslovakia needed machinery strong, capable of to work without rest. The Tatra passed then of the use military to tasks industrial heavy, expanding its capacity and adapting self to new necessities. Soon it began to work in works, mines and large projects of infrastructure. Its design, that during the war had been a necessity, itself converted in an advantage decisive in times of peace. While other trucks required roads prepared, the Tatra simply advanced. That quality it made ideal for regions distant, where to build roads not was an option immediate. The next chapter of its history itself wrote more to the east. In the Soviet Union, the Tatra 111 found the environment for that seemed to have been created. Siberia, with its cold extreme and its terrain hostile, itself converted in the scenario where the truck gained its true reputation. There it itself used for transport heavy works forest and tasks that demanded journeys interminable in conditions inhuman. In the forests the Tatra dragged logs gigantic by roads improvised. In zones mining moved equipment where no other truck could to operate of form reliable. Its presence itself turned so habitual that stopped of to see self as a machine foreign and passed to form part of the landscape. For many workers was simply the truck that never itself stopped. With the time, its fame grew until the point of to become symbol. In a city of Siberia itself, raised a monument in its honor, something exceptional for a truck. Not was a gesture aesthetic, but a recognition to a machine that had made possible the work human in conditions extreme during years. The Tatra 111 itself maintained in production during a period unusually long. Not only survived to the war, but that followed manufacturing self and using self during decades. That continuity is a proof direct of that its design not was circumstantial but profoundly functional. Many of these trucks ended exhausted after years of use intensive. Some were abandoned in zones forest, others remained forgotten in installations industrial when already not had pieces or necessity of to follow repairing them. Decades after began to reappear as findings surprising, still recognizable, even after of years of abandonment. What makes unique to the Tatra 111 within of this series not is only its origin nor its technology advanced, but its journey complete. Was born in war, itself consolidated in the reconstruction, and reached its maximum recognition in the industry heavy and forest. Few vehicles can to say that were useful in so many stages distinct without to lose its identity. This truck represents a form different of to understand the logistics, not the of the movement constant of supplies, nor the of the transport of troops, but the of to operate where nobody else could to do it. In climates impossible and terrains that seemed impassable, the Tatra 111 followed working when all the else itself stopped. For that, each Tatra 111 abandoned that appears today not is only a rest of war or a machine old. Is the proof physical of that there were vehicles thought for to last more than the conflict that them saw to be born. And in that sense, its history not ended when silenced the weapons, but much after in the silence of the forests and the cold of the east. Mercedes-Benz L3000 deposits, kitchens and retreats. The Mercedes-Benz L3000 was the truck normal of the Army German, not the most large nor the most small, but the that fitted in almost all the tasks daily. Appeared before of that the war broke out by complete, when Germany reorganized its industry and needed a vehicle reliable for to cover distances medium, to move load regular and to adapt self to roads in bad state. The L3000 not was thought for to highlight, but for to sustain the functioning daily of a system logistical enormous. Since the start of the conflict, the L3000 was used as truck standard. That meant that not fulfilled a mission special nor experimental. Was the vehicle that connected deposits with units, cities with fronts and rearguards with airfields. There, where not made lack a vehicle heavy nor one light, appeared this Mercedes. Its presence itself extended rapidly by all the scenarios where combated Germany. In the north of Africa, operated under heat extreme, transporting supplies in routes long and open. In Europe, Western itself moved by roads and roads rural during the campaigns fast. In the east, faced distances enormous, where constant and conditions each time more hard as the war advanced. The L3000 symbolizes well how functioned the logistics German in the practice. Not was a machine designed for conditions ideal, but for a use continuous. Transported ammunition, foods, pieces, fuel and personnel. In many occasions was adapted for tasks specific without to stop of to be the same truck base. Kitchens of campaign, workshops mobile, vehicles of command and platforms auxiliary departed from its structure. To measure that the war itself prolonged, the production itself went simplifying. The priority already not was the comfort nor the appearance, but to maintain the flow of vehicles in functioning. Many L3000 lost details considered secondary and were adjusted to the essential. That evolution reflects directly the wear industrial German as the conflict itself turned more defensive. Although shared protagonism with other trucks, the L3000 had an identity own. Its engine diesel it gave an autonomy appreciated in campaigns long, where the fuel not always was available. This made that was especially useful in fronts where the supply was irregular and each kilometre counted. In the front eastern, its performance showed both its virtues as its limits. In conditions acceptable functioned of form reliable, but when the mud and the cold itself intensified, the logistics German began to suffer. Even so, the L3000 followed being used until the end, especially in zones where the road still allowed its pass. In the west, after the landing Allied, many L3000 were employed in withdrawals hurried, transporting material and personnel under pressure constant. Others remained abandoned by lack of fuel or by damages minor impossible of to repair in that moment. Is in those scenarios where begins its second history. After the war, numerous L3000 remained scattered by Europe. Some were reused by civilians, others dismantled, and many simply forgotten. Decades later began to appear in farms, deposits or ancient roads military, not as pieces rare, but as rests of a system logistical that had collapsed. What makes unique to the Mercedes-Benz L3000 within of this series not is an innovation technical nor a mission special. Is its role as symbol of the functioning real of the Army German. Not represents ambition excessive nor solutions extreme, represents the work daily, repetitive and necessary that maintained the war in march during years. This truck not was designed for climates impossible nor for rescues heroic. Neither for to cross rivers or to drag tanks. Its function was to sustain the rhythm. In a war where each advance depended of what arrived behind, the L3000 was one of the pillars silent that allowed that system existed. For that, each Mercedes-Benz L3000 abandoned that itself finds today not is a rarity. Is a piece representative of how itself fought really the war. a truck common used until the limit, that ended where already not had nothing more that to transport. Mack NO to position fire of long range. The Mack NO was conceived as tractor of artillery heavy from the start, not departed from a truck civil adapted, nor from a platform reused. Its structure, dimensions and disposition were thought for to work under load constant. Its mission was clear and limited, to tow pieces of great caliber there where other vehicles not could, to do it with security. During the war, the Mack NO operated principally together to artillery of long range. It itself used for to move cannons heavy from zones of concentration until positions of shot, and also for to withdraw them when the situation it demanded. These maneuvers itself performed to low speed and under conditions difficult, with the weight of the cannon influencing directly in each movement. The work of the Mack NO demanded precision. The vehicle advanced slowly, with the trailer submitted to tensions constant. An error in the trajectory could to leave the set immobilized, with the cannon blocking roads or accesses key. For that reason its use was assigned to units trained that knew the limitations of the terrain and of the own vehicle. Its design reflected that function. The structure was robust without elements superfluous. The cabin offered space sufficient for the crew on cargada of the driving and the control of the trailer. Behind, the chassis allowed to transport tools, cables, equipment auxiliary and material necessary for to secure the cannon during the maneuvers. Each element fulfilled a function practical. The Mack NO not participated in long routes logistical, nor in convoys of supply. Its scope of work was the front immediate and the zones of deployment of artillery. There, where itself needed to place a piece heavy in a position concrete, the Mack NO entered in action. Its presence not was constant, but when appeared resulted indispensable. In terrain soft, its role was even more critical. The weight of the artillery made that any displacement was delicate. The Mack NO offered the stability necessary for to drag the cannon without to lose control. This capacity it differentiated clearly of other vehicles of transport heavy that not were designed for to work under that level of load continuous. The production of the Mack NO was limited, not itself treated of a vehicle of use general, and its function specialized, made unnecessary a manufacturing massive. Each unit covered a necessity very concrete within of the scheme artillerymen of the army. For that reason its number was reduced in comparison with other trucks United States of the era. To despite of it, its impact was significant. There where operated, allowed that the artillery heavy itself maintained mobile. Without a tractor adequate, many of these pieces would have remained fixed, or would have been abandoned during the retreats. The Mack NO avoided those situations and allowed to conserve armament that resulted decisive to long distance. After the end of the war, the destination of the Mack NO was distinct to the of other trucks United States. Many units not returned to its country of origin were transferred to armies European that needed to rebuild its capacities of artillery with speed. In that context, the Mack NO continued working during years already was towing pieces military or machinery heavy. In several countries European, the vehicle was integrated in tasks of transport industrial and works public. Its capacity for to drag loads extreme, it made useful more beyond of the scope military. This reuse prolonged its life useful, and explains why some specimens remained in service much time after of the conflict. With the pass of the decades, the necessity of to move artillery heavy of that type was disappearing. To maintain a vehicle so specialized stopped off to have sense. Many Mack NO were retired and stored in deposits military. Others were abandoned directly when its maintenance stopped off to be viable. In Europe of the East, several remained forgotten in zones wooded, ancient barracks or terrains far of centres urban. Its size and weight hindered any attempt of transfer or reuse. There they remained, exposed to the open air, until to be rediscovered years after. The findings of Mack NO abandoned show vehicles covered of rust, with vegetation growing to its around or partially sunken in the terrain. Even in that state, its structure follows transmitting the function for that they were created. Not seem trucks common, but machines constructed for to support an effort extreme. Within of this series, the Mack NO occupies a place own. Not belongs to the logistics general, nor to the transport of troops, nor to the improvisation of emergency. Its function was unique, to move the instruments most heavy of the war terrestrial. Not carried supplies nor men, dragged the power of fire that decided battles from the distance. This truck represents a part essential but little visible of the conflict. The artillery depended of he for to exist as weapon mobile. Without a tractor capable of to move it, its reach and power lost value. The Mack NO was that link silent that allowed that the artillery were always where had that to be. Each specimen that today appears abandoned is the trace physical of that function, not as a curiosity isolated, but the footprint of a war that also itself sustained with machines slow, heavy and precise. The Mack NO fulfilled its mission while was necessary, and remained back when already not had nothing more that to drag. Opel Maultier, tracks improvised for the last kilometre. The Opel Maultier was born of that urgency. Not was conceived as a model new, but as a conversion practical of trucks available. The idea was to modify the indispensable for that the vehicle could to follow advancing when the wheels stopped of to be useful. That modification itself centred in the part back, where itself substituted the system of wheels by a set of tracks taken of other vehicles military. The result was a truck hybrid. In the part front conserved the direction conventional, while that the part back itself supported over chains that distributed the weight and avoided that the vehicle itself sank. Not was a design refined nor balanced, but fulfilled its function. Allowed to advance slowly by zones where the truck's normal remained trapped by hours or days, the Maultier was assigned a form almost exclusive to the front eastern. Its mission principle consisted in to cover the last stretch of the chain logistical. The trains and trucks conventional arrived until where the terrain it allowed. To part of there, the Maultier continued the journey towards the positions advanced. Transported ammunition, rations, fuel and material basic in conditions where any other vehicle failed. Its speed was reduced, and its handling demanded attention constant. The wear mechanical was elevated, but even so resulted more reliable than to leave the supplies stranded in middle of the mud. In many sectors, itself converted in the only medium for to maintain to the troops supplied during the seasons critical. Its presence not guaranteed speed, but yes, continuity. With the pass of the time, the use of the Opel Maultier itself expanded. Besides of the transport of load, some units itself adapted for functions sanitary, allowing to evacuate wounded from zones where the vehicles normal not could to enter. Others served as workshops mobile or vehicles of support technical, especially in areas where the terrain hindered the deployment of infrastructures fixed. Also existed conversions armed, used for tasks of defence punctual or support limited. However, these variants not represented the role principle of the Maultier, its reason of to be followed being the logistics in conditions extreme. Each unit was thought for to fulfill a function concrete within of a context very specific. The production of the Opel Maultier not followed a scheme uniform. It itself manufactured and modified vehicles in distinct points to measure that the situation it demanded. Not itself treated of to create a standard perfect, but of to put in service the largest number possible of units operative in the shortest time. That form of production reflects the character of the vehicle, a response direct to a problem immediate. To measure that the war advanced, the Maultier itself turned an image habitual in the routes secondary of the East. Its silhouette, with the part back over tracks, itself converted in a symbol of the difficulties logistical of the front eastern. There, where the terrain destroyed the plans previous, this truck allowed to maintain a minimum of functioning. With the change of situation in the fronts and the loss of territories, its utility began to diminish. In zones with better roads, to maintain a vehicle so slow and demanding stopped of to be practical. Many Maultier were retired of the service active, disassembled for to recover pieces or simply abandoned when already not resulted necessary. After the end of the war, some remained forgotten in ancient deposits military or in areas rural of the east of Europe. Others were reused to form improvised for tasks civil, until that the wear ended by to render them useless. Decades after began to appear as findings isolated in warehouses abandoned, sheds or ancient roads, still recognizable by its configuration back. These findings confirm the context in that they were created. Not were vehicles thought for to last decades, nor for to highlight by its design. Were constructed for to resolve a problem concrete in a moment critical. Its survival posterior was accidental, not intentional. Within of this series, the Opel Maultier occupies a place own, not represents the logistic standard nor the planning industrial to long term, represents the adaptation forced to an environment hostile, is the result of a war that forced her to modify over the march what already existed, without margin for solutions elegant. The Maultier allowed that the logistics German followed functioning when the mud stopped all the else. not changed the course of the war nor offered advantages decisive, fulfilled a function limited but indispensable in one of the scenarios most difficult of the conflict. In the front eastern, to advance at times meant simply not to stay stopped, and for that the Opel Maultier was a tool key. GMC DUKW 6x6, to exit from the water and to follow rolling. When the troops allied began to plan operations more beyond of the continent American, the problem not was only to arrive to the coast enemy. The true challenge began in the moment exact, in that a ramp of landing touched the water. Between the ship and the beach existed a vacuum logistical that in many cases determined the success or the failure of an operation complete. In that space, uncertain, was born the GMC DUKW, a vehicle conceived for to move south where the war still not had roads. Its appearance in 1942 responded to a necessity immediate, to transport men and material directly from the vessels until land firm without to depend of ports, docks nor infrastructure previous. The DUKW took as base mechanical a truck military already tested, and it wrapped in a hull sealed with form of boat. The result was a vehicle capable of to abandon the water, to advance by the sand, to cross terrain soft, and to continue land inside without to stop self. Not was an idea theoretical, nor a test limited, was produced in large quantities and sent directly to the front. The first scenario where demonstrated its value real was the Pacific. In islands surrounded of reefs, beaches narrow and coasts without preparation, the DUKW allowed to disembark supplies, ammunition and troops there where other vehicles remained rendered useless. In Guadalcanal and in the campaign's posterior, its capacity for to traverse zones little profound and to bypass obstacles coastal, it converted in a tool constant of the advance allied. Each trip reduced the dependence of vessels small and accelerated the flow of material towards the units that already combated inland. In the Mediterranean, its role itself consolidated during the invasion of Sicily. There, the DUKW transported a part substantial of the equipment of the Army United States directly from the ships until points interior, avoiding congestions in the beach and allowing a reorganization more fast of the forces disembarked. Not itself limited to unload and to return. Continued advancing, crossed roads improvised and carried its cargo until where was necessary, something that modified the form in which itself understood the logistics amphibious. That same pattern itself repeated in Normandy. During the days posterior to the landing, the DUKW itself converted in a presence constant between the sea and the rearguard immediate, transported ammunition, fuel, artillery light and troops through of beaches still under threat, and also crossed rivers and zones flooded of the interior French. Its capacity for to operate in water and land without transition visible allowed to maintain the rhythm of advance even when the roads were destroyed or saturated. To difference of other vehicles specialized, the DUKW not disappeared after the operation initial. Once secured the head of beach, followed being useful. Crossed rivers in the Netherlands during the operations in around to the Rhine, participated in the crossing of the Waal, and was employed in zones where the floods formed part deliberate of the battlefield. In those scenarios its hull sealed and its propulsion aquatic, it converted in an extension natural of the logistics terrestrial. In parallel, the DUKW continued operating in the Pacific until the end of the war. In Iwo Jima and Okinawa, carried supplies to beaches under fire and posteriorly was used to move material between zones coastal already secured. Although suffered losses significant by the artillery enemy and the conditions of the sea, its presence was constant. There where had a line between water and land, the DUKW tended a bridge mobile. To the finish the war, thousands of units followed operative. Many were transferred to armies allied and other passed to uses civil and governmental. Its design allowed a life useful prolonged, was used in conflicts posterior, like the War of Korea, where returned to perform tasks of landing and resupply in conditions similar to the of the Second World War. The continuity of its use confirmed that not had been a solution punctual, but a response structural to a problem recurrent. Outside of the scope military, numerous DUKW were employed in tasks of rescue, transport in zones floodable, and services civil. In some countries itself integrated in systems of protection civil, and in others remained stored during decades. That dispersion explains why, with the pass of the time, began to appear in places unexpected. Some were found semi-submerged in rivers European, others remained forgotten in lakes, ancient ports fluvial or terrains rural, where they had been reused as platforms of load or storage. In several cases documented, the DUKW conserved elements original visible, propellers still installed, rudders intact and compartments sealed. Its structure resistant allowed that survived to the abandonment better than many trucks conventional. Even after years of exposure to the water, some maintained its form recognizable, what facilitated its identification by historians and restorers. The combination of use, military intensive, prolongation in conflicts posterior and reuse civil, converted to the DUKW in one of the vehicles most traceable of the century 20. Photographs, manuals, reports, logistical and testimonies direct, allow to rebuild its trajectory with precision. Not itself treats of a vehicle surrounded of suppositions, but of one whose history is documented in multiple fronts and contexts. More beyond of its form peculiar, the DUKW represented a change in the form of to conceive the transport in war. Eliminated a border physical that during centuries had conditioned the operations military. Not substituted to the trucks terrestrial nor to the vessels, but occupied a space critical between both. There, where the war demanded continuity, the DUKW offered transition. For that reason, its legacy not itself limits to the beaches of the Day D, nor to the images iconic of the Pacific. Lives also in the rivers crossed without bridges, in the lakes where was abandoned after to fulfill its mission, and in the archives that detail its journey complete. Was a tool designed for to resolve a problem concrete, and ended converting self in a solution universal within of the logistics amphibious modern. Krupp Protze L2H143, to advance self to the front by road secondary. To beginnings of the decade of 1930, the Army German initiated a process of transformation profound. The dependence of vehicles civil adapted began to stay back, and the priority passed to be the mobility fast in all type of terrains. For to achieve it, the Department of Armament of the Wehrmacht sought a vehicle light that could to fulfill tasks military without to recur to designs heavy nor complex. In that context appeared the Krupp Protze. The Protze not emerged as a truck conventional. Its conception departed from an idea distinct, to create a vehicle light, low, fast and easy of to maintain, capable of to transport troops or to drag pieces of artillery light with the largest agility possible. Its name made reference direct to the carts of artillery traditional, and its function was clearly defined from the start. One of the traits that it differentiated of other vehicles of its era was its disposition mechanical. The engine flat cooled by air itself located in the part front, but with a profile very low. This configuration gave to the driver a visibility exceptional and reduced the height total of the vehicle. The result was a truck that seemed designed to the reverse, with a silhouette little common that soon itself turned unmistakable. The suspension independent and the traction in configuration 6-4 allowed that the Protze itself displaced with ease by roads without paving, tracks rural and terrains irregular. Its behavior was especially adequate for columns fast, where the speed and the capacity of reaction resulted more important than the load maximum. Exceeded the 70 kilometers by hour, a figure notable for a vehicle military light of its time. The production in series began in 1933 and itself maintained active until principles of the war. In 1936, the model was updated to the version L2H143, equipped with an engine more powerful that improved its performance general. Even so, the concept original itself maintained intact, lightness, simplicity and mobility constant. In its configuration of transport of troops, the Protze counted with a box open in the part back, equipped with benches of wood and space sufficient for soldiers and equipment. This disposition facilitated landings fast and reorganizations immediate, something essential in the first phases of the campaign's military German. Besides of the transport of personnel, the vehicle was widely used for to drag pieces of artillery light. In particular, itself converted in an element habitual together to cannons, anti-tank and anti-aircraft of small caliber. Its size and maneuverability allowed to position the pieces with speed and to withdraw them with the same speed when the situation it demanded. During the campaign's initial in Poland, France and the Netherlands, the Krupp Protze itself integrated a form natural in the scheme of the war lightning. The units advanced fast and needed vehicles capable of to follow that rhythm. The Protze fulfilled that role, moving self by routes secondary, fields and roads where the trucks more large resulted clumsy. Its use itself extended to multiple configurations official, existed versions dedicated to communications, transport of personnel, dragging of artillery, generators electric and support to systems anti-aircraft. This versatility made that the Protze were present in a great variety of units, always within of the scope of the logistics light. With the advance of the conflict began to appear its limitations. The increase of the weight of the armament and the change of the scenarios of combat made that the vehicle's light lost protagonism in front of trucks more robust. In terrains extreme like the mud deep of the East or the long distances African, its configuration began to stay short. To despite of it, the Protze followed in service during all the conflict. Although its production ceased in 1942, thousands of units continued operating in distinct fronts. It itself estimates that itself constructed around of 7,000 vehicles, a figure significant for a model specialized in logistics light. In the front eastern, its engine cooled by air offered advantages practical in climates cold, where other vehicles suffered problems related with systems of cooling more complex. In the north of Africa, its simplicity mechanical facilitated repairs fast even in conditions of dust and heat constant. The soldiers that it used developed a relation close with the vehicle. Its behavior predictable and its ease of maintenance it converted in a tool reliable within of units that depended of the movement continuous. In many occasions was used also as vehicle of evacuation improvised or as platform for tasks auxiliary. To finalize the war, numerous Protze remained abandoned in roads, fields and zones rural of Europe. Others were reused by civilians, especially in tasks agricultural or of transport local. Its design simple and its mechanics accessible facilitated this second life, far of the use military original. With the pass of the years, some specimens were rediscovered in farms, warehouses and ancient workshops. These findings allowed to rebuild its history and to confirm the amplitude of functions that performed during the conflict. Today, several Protze restored itself conserve in museums and collections private. Within of this series, the Krupp Protze occupies a place very specific. Represents the phase early of the conflict when the speed and the mobility light were priority. Its role contrasts clearly with the of the trucks heavy and of emergency that would appear more forward, but without to repeat functions nor contexts. The Protze symbolizes the logistics light of the war lightning, was a vehicle thought for to advance fast, to support movements agile, and to maintain the cohesion of units in constant displacement. Its obsolescence arrived soon, but during the years decisive, fulfilled exactly the function for that had been created. Together the other trucks of this series travelled roads distinct within of the same conflict, from the transport massive and the movement of troops until the recovery, the adaptation to the mud, the work in climates extreme, and the transition between sea and land. Each one responded to a necessity concrete in its moment and remained in service while that necessity existed. The specimens that today appear abandoned are the result direct of that use continuous, stopped there where its function ended, like rest material of a war that depended of the movement constant for to sustain self.